Hello, I'm Michael Embry, and welcome to our third program previewing the 31st Kentucky Book Fair. Now, the Kentucky Book Fair will be held November 9th and November 10th at the Frankfort Convention Center. On November 9th, it will be dedicated to children, and the hours will be from 9 o'clock a.m. until 1:30 p.m. Last year was our first Children's Day, and it went over really well with teachers and students, and we're expecting a big turnout again this year. Now, November 10th is the main event when we'll have the children's authors and all the other authors. In fact, nearly 200 authors will be participating in this year's fair. And we'll have many national, regional, and local authors, and they're going to have all kinds of books for the book buyer. And of course, you know, the Kentucky Book Fair is one of the largest book fairs in the nation, and being in our 31st year, it's one of the oldest. So it's really a special event for Frankfort and for Kentucky. Now, for more information about the Kentucky Book Fair, you can visit www.kybookfair.blogspot.com, or you can go to Facebook under Kentucky Book Fair. And one special thing on both sites right now is that we have the catalog for this year's fair that you can view and download. So be sure and visit those websites. Now, today we have three special authors, Darrell L. Smith, Stuart Sanders, and Charles Bogart. And I'd like to welcome each of you here today. Mr. Smith, your book is After the Cancer, What's New? What's your book about? I guess we know it's about cancer.
Well, Mike, it's about surviving cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote my book to hopefully be an inspiration to other people that there is hope and you can beat this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike many cancer patients who receive 3 months or 6 months or a year's notice from their doctor, I was only given 4 hours to live. And I'm a living testimony not only to my faith, but to those who are fighting cancer, that there is hope.
Mm-hmm.
If you stand up and fight this thing. And it's no different than the flu or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're in an auto accident, you're going to run to the hospital and get treatment. And we can no longer run or hide from cancer.
Right. I understand you, colon cancer?
Yes.
And how long ago were you diagnosed with it?
That was 14 years ago. I had 2 stage 4 colon cancers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was only given, like I said, 4 hours to live. But I did survive. And I came to Kentucky, to the University of Kentucky, and they had a procedure where they removed the colon and made a new one.
Mm-hmm.
And so no matter how tragic it may seem, there is hope. You know, the technology is changing every day. And they did the surgery then in 2008, and I've been cancer-free ever since.
It's, I think in your book you say it's a Christian-themed book, and you even
Yes.
touch on what, I guess, miracles. So do you kind of look at your
Yes.
condition as miracles?
Well, my doctor patted my hand that night, and he said, "God bless you, we've done all we could do for you."
Mm-hmm.
And he just left. He told the family, he said, he'll not make it till daylight, you know, and he's gone. I had already turned blue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my blood pressure had bottomed out. My organs were shutting down. And my pastor started a prayer chain, and sure enough, the next morning the doctor came in and I was alive, and he immediately got on the phone and he called his other associates and he said, "You need to get over here at the hospital." He said, "We've got a miracle in 501B. Wow. And so I had a team of 4 doctors. And once I had survived, then it became a problem of getting my strength back and building me up to where I could travel from Alabama to Kentucky. And for me, it was just one miracle right after another. You know, what were the odds of someone in a rural area in Alabama getting to see only one of the 4 doctors in the United States who could even do this procedure? My family doctor in Alabama said that, you know, he said the doctor that does this, said he travels the world over. Said he treats princes and kings. And he said, I don't even know that you can get in to see the guy, you know, or that he'll take your case as far off as it's gone. But with just a few phone calls, I was on my way to UK. So when it was all over and done and said, friends and everyone prompted me to write my book, write a story about it to give hope to others. And so I asked Dr. John Horrigan at University of Kentucky to do my foreword. He was my surgeon, my doctor. So he wrote the foreword for my book, and my pastor did the editing, and it's been an exciting ride ever since.
Well, I understand from some research that, you know, the book is, I guess, targeted to cancer, you know, victims, but it's also targeted to caregivers as well.
Yes, I spent a lot of time, obviously over 14 years, in and out, living in and out of hospitals, and by my own personal experience, because I had to go back twice a year for more surgeries over that 14-year period, I met so many people who were like me and just totally unprepared. I mean, be it cancer or even a car wreck, when you get to that hospital, you're incapacitated. Somebody, a caregiver, is going to have to provide that hospital with proof of insurance, living wills, actual wills. There are so many things that come up, and we've met people in our travels. I just recently completed a 9-state book signing tour, and the people I met, it's just incredible how unprepared we all are. Some folks even tell me, well, I don't even know where Dad keeps the keys to his truck. Some people, you know, spouses aren't even on the family checkbook. And when that key person is taken out of circulation for any extended period of time, it's devastating to a caregiver or a family member. It's just as hard on the family member as it is the patient, I believe.
Well, you've written, this is your first book, right?
Yes.
Do you plan any follow-ups or?
My second book is at the publisher now, and it covers a more in-depth on things to prepare for and what we can do. Excuse me. It got so interesting to me when I started following up interviews with patients in hospitals and relatives of people who were in the hospital, that I even went to an attorney, and we got his insight on avoiding bankruptcies, living wills, things you can do that we all should already have taken care of. It's common sense things. It's called preparing for your journey. And I treat it all as a journey through life, you know, and things we encounter along the way. But most of us were taught early on, you know, obviously to have a savings account and things to prepare for and life insurance. No one likes to talk about life insurance or funeral plans, but it's inevitable, you know. It will come around to all of us at one time or another. And the better prepared that our families are means a world of difference in a time of crisis.
Okay. Well, Darrell, appreciate you being here, and I wish you much success at this year's fair.
Well, thank you very much, and I certainly appreciate and thank the Kentucky Book Fair for allowing me to be here.
Our next guest is Stuart Sanders, and his book is Perryville Under Fire, The Aftermath of Kentucky's Largest Civil War Battle. Stuart, tell us about your book.
Sure. As a lot of your viewers know, on October 8th, 1862, Kentucky's largest battle raged outside of the fairly quiet town of Perryville. And the fight lasted about 5 hours. More than 7,500 soldiers were killed and wounded. And essentially the armies moved on after the battle was over. And the burden of really caring for not only the thousands of wounded soldiers and burying the dead, but the burden of caring also for a lot of sick soldiers essentially fell upon Perryville's 300 inhabitants. So this book really looks at what happened on the battlefield after the fight, what happened in Perryville after the battle as every home, barn, stable, shed became makeshift field hospitals, and also what happened to the surrounding communities after the Battle of Perryville. Really, any town within 50 miles of Perryville after the fight became a large makeshift hospital. In Danville, there were more than 3,500 sick Union troops left there. In Harrodsburg, 10 miles away from the battlefield, there were about 1,700 wounded Confederates left in that town. And really the litany of the towns that were affected by the battle goes on. And there are hospitals even as far as New Albany, Indiana, after the battle. So in brief, the book really looks at what happened in Perryville after the firing stopped and how the battle not only affected Perryville, but the region as a whole.
Now, I understand this is probably about the first book written about the aftermath of...
It is. There have been chapters on the aftermath and other Perryville histories, but this is sort of the one that looks at it in a more comprehensive view for the first time. And I found out some interesting things while doing the research. I was fortunate to be executive director of the Perryville Battlefield Preservation Association, so I spent a lot of time looking at the aftermath of the battle. And one thing I've discovered is actually how big the footprint of the aftermath really was. And because Kentucky was a border state during the war, the location of the Battle of Perryville essentially enabled civilians from the north, from Wisconsin, Indiana, and Illinois, to come down and really search for their wounded and slain family members. So because of that, really the footprint of the aftermath was large, as these civilians took bodies of their loved ones home or came here to find wounded relatives. And so that really extended the effect of the aftermath of the battle.
When we talk about the impact, how long did it take to I guess, Perryville to restore to its...
Well, really it took years for the town to recover on an economic basis, first of all. You have civilians like Henry P. Bottom, who owned most of the land upon which the battle was fought. Really, for the first time ever after the battle, his family had to buy food to eat. He lost 22 tons of hay, 4 horses, 9 sheep, 3,000 pounds of bacon and pork, and the list of losses just goes on. And he was one of many families that really suffered. In the town as well, one Pennsylvania soldier recorded that the dead and dying are in every house. And so from a psychological standpoint, it took residents a long time to recover as well. And really there were hospitals in Perryville as late as March 1863, and hospitals in other communities. It went on and on a lot longer after that. The psychological toll is one of the most interesting facets of the battle too. I think it really took civilians years to recover, and a lot suffered essentially from post-traumatic stress as a result of the aftermath of the battle.
How long? I know you've done some scholarly papers and articles for other magazines. How long did it take you to write this book?
Hard to say. I wrote segments of it over the years, really. So it was definitely a labor of love. Again, being involved with the efforts to preserve the battle, it's nice to really tell that story comprehensively and for the first time. But I was fortunate that the park at Perryville, it's a state historic site. They've done a great job of collecting diaries and letters and memoirs. Other historians have deposited their research files there as well. Then the National Archives has a lot of information as well. So there was a great breadth of source material available for me as part of this project.
Well, I guess the book is, would be targeted to Civil War buffs, but it seems like you, by going into how it affected families and
right.
I guess even slaves and others, that you really brought a humanity to it.
I hope so. And again, that's where the letters and the diaries really come in handy. I think there's one great account that was found about a 12-year-old from Springfield, Kentucky, who rode the 15 miles or so to Perryville to get a sense of what real war looked like. And what he experienced really changed his life forever, especially when he rode by the Henry P. Bottom house, which still stands on the battlefield. He saw a pile of severed arms and legs that had been amputated that stood some 4 or 5 feet high, he said. And he concluded, "We soon tired of this sickening sight." Went home and he literally had nightmares for weeks. And so, I was fortunate, thanks to these, the availability of the source material, I was able to find a lot of civilian accounts and also soldiers' accounts that sort of enliven the narrative and really tell the story in a more comprehensive way.
Now this is your first book, right?
It is, and I've got one I'm writing now on the Battle of Mill Springs, Kentucky, which was an important early battle in the state, fought down near Somerset. And that should come out sometime in 2013.
Well, the Kentucky has a lot of Civil War history to it, doesn't it?
Right. We're really fortunate that a lot of battlefields, including Perryville, Richmond, Munfordville, other sites like Camp Nelson, the Mary Todd Lincoln House, all those places have been preserved so that we as Kentuckians can go and really enjoy the heritage of the state. We're fortunate there's a lot, and I really encourage people to go to these battlefields and tromp around and really walk in the footsteps of history to get a sense of what these soldiers experienced 150 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Will this be your first Kentucky? I guess it will be your first.
It is. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and appreciate you all having me, and looking forward to it.
Have you been as a patron before?
I have, and it's a great experience, and certainly encourage people to come out. I think the breadth of authors you all have and the variety of different books from nonfiction to fiction, it's really the best of its kind in the region.
Okay. Well, thanks, Stuart.
Sure.
Appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
And our other guest is Charles Bogart, and he co-authored a book, Railroad Defenses of the Bluegrass, 1861 to 1865.
A Civil War guy and a railroad guy here.
Okay.
So we mixed the two together.
Uh-huh. Now, I understand your book is about how the Union
About how the
defended railroads.
Union defended central Kentucky, the railroads. I'm a Civil War guy. Battles, that interests me, but also what really interests me is how you supply the Army to keep them in the field. Mm-hmm. And the way you supply them during the Civil War was railroads. Mm-hmm. The railroads then become one of the major objectives for the enemy to attack. Morgan's Christmas raid is against the railroads. There's other raids against the railroads. So that in turn means you have to start defending the railroads. And how did you defend the railroads? Mm-hmm. Early in the war, you got so many troops back in the background who are guarding the railroads, you don't have enough men up front. So then you got to move men up front. You don't have enough. It's a complicated matter of juggling your resources and everything to defend the railroad. And the Confederates never quite got it down. The Union at least figured it out along the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess railroads and rivers were the most important modes of transportation.
Yeah, they were the most important modes of transportation. And the railroad we're concerned with here within the book, I'll call it the Kentucky Central, that ran from Covington down to Nicholasville, that supplied Camp Nelson in Lexington. And then it actually consisted of three separate railroads, the Covington and Lexington, Maysville and Lexington and Danville. And then our other railroad is the railroad from Lexington to Frankfort on over to Louisville, which consisted of two separate railroads, the Lexington and Frankfort and the Louisville and Frankfort. Different gauges. The one railroad's 5-foot gauge. The Frankfort railroad's 4.5, so you're offloading. The problems you have to go through that. And so it's interesting. One of the other things is it's just not a defense of the bluegrass. We do show the profit loss statement for the Kentucky Central. And it ties in very good to his Perryville book because you can see their profits going up. The Battle of Perryville, they get the invasion of Kentucky. The Confederates come in, their profits drop down to nothing. Their profits stay low even after the battles are with because they're spending money to rebuild that which the Confederates have destroyed within the state, and then it slowly comes back up. And then when Camp Nelson comes online, their profits really jump up. And then when Camp Nelson closes, it all just tumbles back down. It's just interesting to find the economic impact that the Civil War has on Kentucky that most people don't quite think about, and I've never really thought about till we started to look at the railroad.
And how was, I understand you've written, what, three
books. Yeah, they've all been basically railroad related. The first one was on the railroads and streetcars here at Frankfort. The second one was a look, which was last year at the book fair, was a look at the streetcars and interurbans of Kentucky. And then our book this year, and by the way, we are working on another book on the Frankfort and Cincinnati Railroad, and some people are saying, not another book on the Frankfort and Cincinnati, but we're going to look at the economic impact of the Frankfort and Cincinnati. Frankfort and Cincinnati ran from Frankfort to Georgetown to Paris. Never got to Cincinnati.
Well, of course, you know, you teamed with William Ambrose to write this book.
Right.
How was it working with another author?
It was a little bit different. Finally, we divided it up. He did the basic writing. I did the research on this. And then when he would write it, I would then take it and go through the book, making changes and everything. And then, of course, we'd have to have a little conflab together to decide whose wording was the right way and things like that. So it is very different from my first two books where I just went out and did it. Now we gotta satisfy, I guess, each other's egos on, you know, how we're gonna write this out and word it and everything.
Are you still friends?
We're still friends, and yeah, and we're working on the Frankfort and Cincinnati book. So yeah, I think what happened was we brought two. I think I'm good at research. He's good at writing and wording it down. He's also very good at laying the book out. So it worked together that way.
Well, your book, of course, you know, focusing on the Civil War, and but I guess railroad buffs would love this book as well, wouldn't they?
Yeah, we assume that we're going to have two audiences, the railroad audience and the Civil War audience, looking at this. You know, both are a major market in the United States. There's, I guess, for almost every Civil War book out, there's a railroad book sitting out there somewhere. It's amazing the number of people who are interested in the railroad history and that.
Now you're from Frankfort, right?
No, I'm out of Newport, Kentucky. I'm out of Sin City.
Okay.
I grew up next to the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad tracks, and my mom always said from the time I was 4 years old, if she couldn't find me, it was up to the ice house to find me sitting by the railroad tracks.
Okay.
And I went to St. Stephen's School